Herzliya-Conference 2012.
Herzliya-Conference 2012.
Special interviews, highlights, and live broadcasts on IDC-Radio.
And welcome back to the IDC Radio at 106.2 FM or online at 1062fm.co.il. My name is Anouk Laurie, and here with me is Claude Kandiyoti, former editor of Contact J, a monthly magazine for the Belgian Jewish community, one of the founders of the organization Col d'Or, a member of the World Jewish Diplomatic Corps, a regular contributor to Haaretz newspaper, and also a signatory to J-Call, which we will talk about shortly. Claude, before we start, I feel like I have to come clean with you, and that despite my embarrassingly American Midwestern accent, I am in fact one of your compatriotes.
You're Turkish.
I'm Turkish, that's why, exactly. How did you know? No, in fact, I'm Belgium, I'm from Antwerp, so we could conduct this interview, I suppose, in French or in Dutch, if you can speak Dutch. But
I can't.
I don't think my superiors will be happy with me anyway, so I guess we'll continue in English. Claude, you're here for the 11th annual Herzliya-Conference. You're talking tomorrow about the issue facing delegitimization and anti-Semitism. Do Israeli policies affect the state of the Jewish diaspora? You've also been involved with J-Call, a non-profit advocacy group based in Europe, sometimes associated with the U.S. group J Street. You signed the relatively controversial petition, J-Call petition in 2010, which is critical of the current policies of the Israeli government and calls on a freeze of settlement activity. Just for a bit of background, J-Call's first act was a petition to the European Parliament called Call for Reason, which says of the Israeli occupation and settlement that they are morally and politically wrong, that they feed the unacceptable delegitimization process in Israel and abroad. So I do want to start by asking you if you think that J-Call has or ever could achieve anything. And before you answer that question, just let me remind you that only last week the Vice Prime Minister of Israel, Silvan Shalom, said of the settlement of Migron that it is here to stay and it is eternal, even though Israel's High Court of Justice has ordered Migron evacuated by the end of March because it was illegally built on private Palestinian land. So to go back to my question, in light of the current political climate, could an organization like J-Call ever achieve anything?
First of all, hello. Thank you for receiving me in your show. Just to correct one thing, if you want straight away to go on the issue of J-Call. J-Call wasn't a petition towards the European Parliament. It's a call. It's a general call, which aims mainly at the Jewish communities in Europe. And it's a message towards our Israeli friends. We call ourselves a pro-Israel, pro-peace group. Because after the call, J-Call became a movement. Do I think that it can achieve anything? Look, J-Call is not a group which is supposed to influence or dictate any way the current Israeli government or Israeli people should vote or operate. We believe that, first and foremost, there is a certain trend within European Jewry which kind of forbids any open dialogue, criticism sometimes, on certain policies of the government of Israel. And the first message was towards them, to say that, you can be pro-Israel, you can be a Zionist, and you can still say, there are certain things which we can't accept. And we have to be open about it. We have to be open about the substance of our current relationship with Israel, what we call the Israel-diaspora relationship. Second of all, we believe that as a pro-Israel group, and we are really pro-Israel, that's why I signed the call, we feel that we can talk very openly to our Israeli brothers, friends, to Israel, where our heart lies. I'm Belgian, but my heart lies with Israel. I'm here every month. I invest here as a businessman. I very much believe in this country. But we see a current situation in Europe and in the world. And we believe that it is our duty to be able to say, look, guys, there is a situation which is taking place now in Europe. You have to be made aware of that. There is certain debates which we feel kind of awkward with them. So some would tell you, you know, you don't live in Israel, so you can't criticize. Come and live here, and then you will be able to say. I say that we are very fortunate to live in a democracy, that we have the right to use our civic rights to talk our mind until the moment that it remains within certain red lines, a tolerant way of discussing, a way of maintaining a positive dialogue, of always saying that our first thought, our first priority is the way that Israel is viewed outside Israel, to fight against the delegitimation of Israel, which exists, to fight against the rise of antisemitism and this mixture which is made between Israel and the past. And I will tell you, I lecture throughout Belgian universities. And I lecture in the name of the umbrella Jewish organization called the CCOJB. And I found myself months ago giving a lecture at the Department of International Relations with very prominent Middle Eastern experts, Belgian, so they are like / prominent. And the discussion was tough. Israel was criticized. It was a very hard discussion. Despite my liberal views, I was seen as a right-winger, pro-settlement, and so on. And I didn't mind. What happened is that at the end of the lecture, when we had to conclude, the main speaker, who is supposed to be who is the dean of the department, started to say, but you know, at the end of the day, it's such a pity what those Palestinians have to suffer for something that they didn't commit. And I looked at him, I said, like, what do you mean? Are you implying that Israel wouldn't exist if there wasn't the Shoah and the Holocaust, that Israel exists because of the Holocaust only? But it's a fact that they are paying for that. And you know, I started to burst out saying, you know, this is an Ahmadinejadian way of interpreting a current situation. It's not the reality, and as an historian, should be ashamed. And I thought like the room would go after, would support me. On the contrary, so this was a clear fact of delegitimizing Israel, of saying, in a sense, you know, we have no right of self-determination, and this is something that in J-Call, outside J-Call, wherever, at least where I will participate, this is something that I will fight, and I think that J-Call is fighting. So will it achieve anything? If it can convince Jews to be more open and to open the dialogue and feel less isolated in the society in which they live, it will have achieved something.
So some people would say, as a response to that you just mentioned the extraordinary amount of criticism that Israel faces, especially in Europe, and you just mentioned the university in Belgium. In light of that, some people would say to you, why would any lover of Israel, why would any Zionist, why would any Jew add to that criticism when there is already so much out there?
You know, in a couple, you have always to support the other in front of everybody and not say, you know, when he's wrong, you did something wrong, admit it at least. I think that I think that there are two levels to be against legitimate criticism of the policies of Israel. There is a current situation in this country which is called the status quo. This status quo, in my point of view, is quite unbearable. Now, this is the way we live in Israel, and the Israeli live this situation. The government is pushing towards that. That's the choice of the Israelis. I do not have to abide by this at any condition. I mean, I can say my mind that there are certain things which are quite frightening me when I see the type of debate. On the other hand, Israel remains a democratic society. It's an independent country. It will make its own decision, and I think for the better and the best. But where I live, I think it's quite all right to open a healthy debate, and not to be always, whatever they do, I will support. I mean, they will jump from the window, I will jump with them. No. I think that there are certain things which we have to say, there are certain flaws, as there are flaws in any democracy. Now, Israel is more on the front line than many other countries around the world. And probably Israel is the main country on the front line today. It's a fact. It's a fact that it creates certain, it awares either resentment, but at least a certain focus. Now, the good thing, in a sense, which is a bad thing in general, is that we live in a current period where Israel is not the main topic on the agenda. And most civil society, I mean, the Europeans and the street in general, the public in general, doesn't have Israel as its priority, and the conflict in the Middle East as a priority. I mean, we are facing today serious issues, the current economical turmoil, the current social turmoil, and I think that they top the entire agenda. So the issue of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is quite mild today, which is a good thing, I think, for Israel. But that doesn't mean that we have to remain completely silent and that we cannot open a debate, to try also to outreach many Jews who feel antagonized by this talk, who do not recognize themselves by this way of saying amen to everything, but who want to say, we love Israel, but we want to be able to talk openly about it.
Do you feel, as a Jewish leader in Europe, that Israeli policies and Israeli politics affect Jews abroad? Do they affect the perception of Jews abroad?
It's a fact they do. They've always done. Look, at the moment that I call myself a Zionist, a pro-Israel, it's clear that the policies of Israel will affect the way I view things, the way I operate within my community.
But I mean the way non-Jews will view you. Do Israeli policies affect their views of Jews abroad?
It clearly does. In the past year, I think it has created a gap of sensitivity. We do not view the way Israel is criticized the same way that certain civil societies criticize Israel. I mean, we view it in a much more aggressive way. And I think it's not something which is confined to only the Jewish communities. I think that there is a new rise of communitarism in Europe, and that many communities feel the same. They feel antagonized, they feel isolated, they feel misunderstood. We, particularly because of our past, feel very much understood today. And we confuse sometimes what is criticism with xenophobia and antisemitism, and we do not see exactly where the divide lies. That's why it's very important, and that will be my talk tomorrow, to draw what we call a red line.
Do you feel that the perception of Jews in Europe has changed since the Netanyahu administration, which has in fact been the most right-wing government since the independence of Israel? Have you felt a surge in anti-Jewish, anti-Israeli sentiment?
No, not especially. I think that, for example, when we speak about delegitimizing, and I will talk only about continental Europe, I'm witnessing the rest, but I live what's happening in Europe. I don't see so much delegitimation. Delegitimation is very much confined to very specific groups, mainly Muslims, immigrants, mainly extreme leftist groups. You do not really see very large and wide phenomena of delegitimizing Israel, certainly not in the political circles. So the way Jews have been perceived, I don't think it changed much. I think it has created a kind of divide within the Jewish communities. If we are completely identified with the policy of the Netanyahu government as Jews, I think that there is a decline in this perception. There is clearly a phenomena where many are saying, we can't talk with Jews anymore. They are not rational. It's not possible to have a dialogue on the conflict. This is a very dangerous way of appreciating us. I think we are much more open than what it looks like.
Do you sometimes feel that the line between anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Semitism is being blurred in Europe?
It is. Yes, I see it very often. Now, again, this is my perception, and it's often not the perception within the societies, the European societies. I will give you an example. In 2009, former French-Belgian defense minister, who you probably know, André Flau, organized a demonstration, not a demonstration, a theater scene, a dramatical scene in a place called Nivelles, a small town. On the market, he had brought people dressed as Israeli soldiers, middle of the day. It was the market day, with the people dressed as Palestinians, and they did the reenacting of a checkpoint, and where you had seen Israelis wearing tags, a bit reminding of the Nazis, and the poor Palestinians who were thrown on the floor, and it was a terrible scene. And on his speech, he referred clearly, saying, you know, I've always fought against any form of Nazism, fascism, and I will continue. And that's part of my fight against what's happening in the Palestinian territories. Now, for us, and if you look at the way the European Agency for Human Rights has defined it, this is clearly an act of anti-Semitism. So the community sued the minister, who really was shocked. He's calling himself like a pro-Jew. He has helped the Jews in terms of, for example, the recovery of Jewish assets. So this is also very, very poignant for them. We lost the case. Clearly, for the Belgian judicial system, this was not a case of anti-Semitism. We went into appeal and we lost again. So clearly there is a demise in the way that we perceive things and the way things are perceived within a law environment and within a social perception, a public perception of what is anti-Semitism and where is the divide.
Would you go even further than that, perhaps, and say that for some people, anti-Israel slogans or propaganda is an excuse for ancient Jew hatred?
Sometimes. I think that there is a lot of ignorance. I think that, you know, anti-Semitism was always there and will always remain there. We have to fight it. We have to maintain this dialogue. And this is also one of the points which is very important, is that by seeing everything as an aggressive way of, you know, going against us, you know, this concept that the Israeli government also very much talks about, you know, everybody is against us. They're all anti-Semites in a sense. I think it's wrong. And it has put ourselves in a situation where we have very much difficulties in creating a dialogue, at least with the political class, not to talk about the academia and the civil society in general. I think that this dialogue has to be maintained, whatever costs. We have to fight anti-Semitism, but we have to work with the politicians in creating those famous red lines, what you cannot go beyond. In France, it worked. They did that. It's working. And there is a set of laws which are now being applied. I think it can work in other countries as well if we take maybe another approach.
You once, in one of your Haaretz articles, you praised the New York Jews for what you said was such a vibrant community. Why have Europe's Jews not been able to expand and adapt as much as American Jews and especially New York Jews?
You know, I wrote this article by making a comparison with a restaurant. You know, it's in New York. You have a menu on how you want to live your Judaism. You can live it in a political way. You have hundreds different religious way of living it. Europe is more old style, even though the reform and the conservative movement come from Europe originally. But because of our past, because of the war, we had to rebuild communities in a very monolithic way, which I think has had this time. We now have to look at new ways, which are more outreaching. We need to outreach a new generation of Jews to be involved in their community. To do that, you have to go a bit beyond just the issue of one way of living your Jewishness and one way which is also to be pro-Israel all the time and taking Israel as the main centerpiece of your militancy within the Jewish community. We have to open up. I think that one way which was initiated in Europe, initiated in London, is by having more conferences such as Limud. Chemi Shalev, for example, spoke about limudizing the Jewish world. I think it's a very good concept. We need
By Limud, you mean teaching?
Limud is a conference which was started in Great Britain 25 years ago, which is a 3-day conference where you can see every aspect of Judaism and everybody is open to present what they want to present. I mean, there is very clear rules on what you can and cannot present, but it's outside the community, the institution and the organizational Jewry. It's very open, and I think this is something which is creating a new breed of members who are getting involved in their community. So the community has to have more than one gate to entrance gate for being involved. It has to be more inclusive. That's what is lacking in Europe today, and that's what I see more in the US. I mean, if you look at things, most of the big initiatives who have shaped American Jewry come outside the main institutional Jewry. I mean, that is Taglit, for example, Birthright, or other initiative. And there is space for that. You do not need to be part of an organization to be able to achieve things. It's much more open to individual initiative, and it has also the means to do that.
Finally, do you think that European Jews, and in fact Jews in all of the diaspora, should be more involved in Israeli politics?
In Israeli politics, no. I don't think that we have to be involved specifically in Israeli politics. We have to strengthen our bonds.
Decision making.
Decision making. What decision can we make for Israel? I think that Israel should communicate on its own. I think that Israel should stop using Jewish organization to try to communicate. I think that Israel should be much more proactive, stop communicating only on the conflict and stop only reacting. I think that in the past few years, the way, the perception at least of the response of the Israeli government has been in a very arrogant way, which is not well perceived. It has to change that. Israel can communicate better. Now, it's not the Jewish organization who have to communicate for Israel. They need to be a divide. On the other hand, Israel is the center of our Jewish life. I think that Israel is not only about politics, it's not only about the conflict. I think that there is a lot of Jewish thought, of Jewish substance, of something very strong in terms of the cultural link, which need to be strengthened. So I think that every Jew should be involved with Israel outside the politics and should be much more involved with Israel than it is today. And Israel should open up to open those gates to be able to be involved in other ways.
Claude Kandiyoti, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy your panel tomorrow.
I hope too.
You're listening to the IDC Radio at 106.2, and I'm Anouk Laurie. Thank you.
Herzliya-Conference 2012.
Herzliya-Conference 2012.
Special interviews, highlights, and live broadcasts on IDC Radio.